Welcome back to the Finest Unfiltered. Thanks everybody for joining. So we're going to be discussing an article I recently wrote. So if you take your phone camera and you put it at this QR code right here, right up top, it'll bring you to the article. The article's titled "Police Free Zone, New York City." The title goes into not only the Brownsville Safety Alliance Police Free Zone, which is held quarterly in New York City, and that happens in Brownsville in the 7-3 precinct in a small area on Mother Gascon Boulevard. But it actually delves into the entire violence intervention program throughout New York City, which has ballooned in the last 4 years. The program started off with about $8 million in funding from New York City taxpayers and is about up to $180 million in taxpayer funds. If you read deeply into the program, it sounds a lot like Zohran Mondani's Department of Community Safety plan, which he plans on, I believe, anywhere people are projecting anywhere from 500 million to 800 million. Now, he's not talking about this program, so this program will exist on top of that. And it's just, again, in my opinion, it's just a furtherance of the defund the police movement. It's moving more towards an abolishment of police as we know it. It's more of a community-based approach. It's, again, the reimagining of policing without labeling out our imagination or having a science experiment without giving any of the data points. So the first part of the article that I get into is just the optics of the community control, right? And my first line in the article is I say, when is a police free zone not really a police free zone? And I think it's easy when the police commissioner's watching it, when you have cops assigned all outside of the zone and they're heavily monitoring it, and you have plainclothes uniform cops there as well. So I would say that that's not really a police free zone, right? So it's just like crazy optics there, and then so like the thing is you run this public safety experiment, and according to the Brownsville Safety Alliance, it's a week-long event. It turns part of Mother Gascon Boulevard into a police free zone, except for the officers who are monitoring it in secret. And according to the memo, it runs daily from noon to 6 p.m. It bans uniform officers from entering the area unless a person is shot or stabbed, right? Unless. So that's a big one, right? So right there and then, what is this? Is this really police free? I don't think so. Not at all, right? It's police monitor. It's honestly it's a joke. It's a social experiment. So then people are asking, well, what about the 911 calls? So I go further into that 911 calls. So during those 7 daylight hours, and it's important to highlight 7 daylight hours, emergency calls are rerouted away from the NYPD, right? And where do they go? 911 dispatchers route those calls to violence intervention groups, right? Violence intervention groups that are put together by privately contracted non-for-profits in the city that you, as a New York City taxpayer, are pouring over $180 million into currently. And that tab's about to rise because of this experiment. Successful experiment, might I add, because Eric Adams has touted it as successful. Joe Biden has touted it as successful. I have yet to hear any Republicans even speak on this. Weird. So the taxpayers have no idea who these people are, who these violence interventors are. They don't know how they're hired. They don't know how they're vetted. They don't know how they're paid, how much they're paid, what their duties and responsibilities are. They know nothing. They don't know how they handle these calls for service. We don't know their training. And there's no public record of any of this stuff, right? There's nothing that's readily available for any of this. So essentially, it's community policing without the police and without the accountability. The other glaring thing here is that I point out in the article is it's a daylight only experiment, right? It's a reimagining of public safety, a bold reimagining of public safety, yet it only runs from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. If it's such a success, why aren't we running it 24 hours a day? Why, as we do this quarterly, are we not expanding its area of operation? Why aren't we trying overnight? during Brownsville's most violent hours. And I think we all know why, because the truth's obvious. This is a controlled optics exercise. It's not a real test. It's a midday event dressed up as police reform. That's all it is. And the police are the ones helping this along, not the rank and file, but the police commissioner, the mayoral appointed management. They've been watching this with the blinders on, right? They've been telling you that they support the rank and file of the NYPD while at the same time undermining the rank and file of the NYPD by staying silent about this. And where's the mainstream media? Where's Fox News? Where's the New York Post? Where's the Daily News? Where's Newsmax to report on any of this? They're nowhere. New Yorkers don't even know about this. When I first put this on social media, people were telling me that I was lying and this wasn't real. After they went and looked up the comptroller's report on all of this, they were like, oh, wow, that's weird. So you're being fed garbage, basically. And this is what this article is about. So now when we get to oversight, right? Progressives want oversight on the NYPD 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They want NYPD officers to be wearing body cameras. They want their text messages monitored with their loved ones. They want their homes monitored. They want them to be on camera 24/7. The most scrutinized profession in the world. Yet this police-free zone offers zero accountability. No body cameras for violence interventions. No records of how they handled a dispute. No crime reporting data for any crimes that occurred. There's no follow-up. So victims are, again, left out in the cold. And what's even more glaring, if you want to file a complaint against a police officer, he has all this identifiable information on him or her, and you're able to go to Internal Affairs, you're able to go to the Department of Investigation, you're able to go to the Civilian Complaint Review Board, you're able to go to the mayor's office, you're able to go to the NYPD. You have numerous ways that you could report problems that you had with an NYPD officer. What could members of the community do to report something that happened with a violence intervention that they weren't happy about? What could the community do, who's funding this program, by the way, to even weigh in on how this is happening? So the double standards on the oversight is insane. We want accountability when it's uniformed NYPD cops, but we want community empowerment when it's their own unmonitored contractors who are handling public safety with taxpayer funds. When officers make a when officers make a split-second decision, every second is recorded, every second is litigated. But when violence interrupters act, there's no footage, there's no paperwork, and there's no public record. Right? I mean, I think it's absolutely ridiculous at this point. And then, what City Hall's saying is a grassroots success story is really not grassroots at all, because they're paying hundreds of millions of dollars for this program to exist. So this isn't something that sprouted up from the community. This is something that's sprouted up from you. And so there you go. And then further in the article, I detail out the police-free zone that happens as part of the Brownsville Safety Alliance. And the Brownsville Safety Alliance is just one of many groups that are receiving this $180 million in funding. And one of these groups that are picking people to be violence interventors. So the bottom line is this. Even the report that New York City's progressive controller, Brad Lander, had just drafted, The Cure for Crisis. He put that out in March, I believe, March of 2025. He supports the Community Violence Intervention Program as a tool for reducing shootings in New York City. He actually goes on in the report to say that this program has helped reduce shootings in the city. It's currently taking place in 29 of the NYPD's 77 patrol precincts throughout New York City. So he touts as a success. He says it brings down shootings, but yet he then goes on in the report to further state, well, there's really no accountability, and we kind of really don't have any data, and there's really no metrics for success. So I don't know what kind of report he's doing here, but even he begins to highlight the things that we spoke about recently when we did a podcast on this. And those of you that aren't familiar with Brad Lander, I think most of the nation is at this point, because he's made such a fool of himself going to immigration court, getting himself arrested twice, interfering with ICE agents who are enforcing immigration law in this country. The first time the case was dropped, this time I don't know, and that's when I lean on the Republicans and I lean on the Trump administration, and I say, when are you actually going to hold elected officials accountable for their actions? Why are they allowed to interfere with ICE agents doing their job, and what kind of example does it set for the public and the other people that are going to go ahead and interfere with ICE agents doing their job? Right. So where's the accountability for Brad Lander? Is a good question. So Brad Lander puts this report out. He says, he goes on to basically weigh in on how great it is, while also saying he has some concerns, but believes it should be expanded. So the reason I'm bringing the Brownsville Safety Alliance up is because it falls squarely into the pitfalls that even the progressive Lander warns about. Minimal public accountability, zero transparency in the handling of calls or incidents. So for those of you defending the zone, including you, Brad Lander, here it is. You need to have, in order to defend it, we need to have, or to tout it as successful, as both Eric Adams and Joe Biden have done. We need clear public metrics and reporting on how many calls, what were the nature of the calls, what were the outcomes of the calls, how did the victims of crime feel about how it was handled. We need transparent staff vetting, training, and oversight, right? We need to know who you're hiring. We need to know how they're hired, how they're paid, what their workday looks like, what their benefits are, how we could report corruption, because corruption could be ripe under this program with zero accountability. We also need scalability and extension, right? Beyond daylight hours, beyond that small area. We haven't seen any of that. We've seen more money, and we see the area stay the same. Daylight hours stay the same, not expand, not grow. So how are we touting it as a success if it hasn't grown at all? And then ultimately, we need independent evaluation of these programs to test the claims that they make, to measure the effects on the community and the effects on crime. And we need to weigh that out with the cost of what it would have been if we would have just let the police do their job, which we pay them to do. Right. And we also need to know of any unintended consequences this is causing, like maybe more corruption, like maybe furthering violence, like maybe during that police free zone, there's a lot of crime happening that's going unreported. Maybe we should be knocking on the people's doors who live in that area and see if this is something actually, in fact, that they want. And so right now, for me, I believe the entire violence intervention program, in its entirety, is nothing more than a very expensive public safety experiment with zero return on investments for New York City taxpayers. While they're touting it as a success, they haven't shown us any data as to why it's a success. And even the people claiming that it's a success are saying there's no metrics. So how would you come up with that decision? I reached out to the NYPD for comment. And as usual, the NYPD did not respond to my request for comment. I've spoken with one of the co-founders of the Brownsville Safety Alliance. They have invited me to the next one to go see what, in fact, a police-free zone is about and what their vision for public safety is. And I will 100% go and do that. But these are my issues right on the face. Very transparent about how I feel about things. And I think right now it's a huge waste of taxpayer money. And I think, ultimately what we're seeing in New York City is now we have politicians claiming they support public safety, claiming they support the police, but yet their stances remain the same as they did in 2020 at the height of the defund the police movement. They're saying that police don't keep us safe, that arrests don't bring crime down, that police interaction doesn't affect the criminal activity on New York City streets. And they really have no argument for it because it's not proven. And if it was, this is something, and if you were to prove it, you would keep data on absolutely everything, and we'd be able to have a rational discussion on this. So as of right now, this is all opinion based. But I think it's safe to say $180 million getting flushed down the toilet, as the way I see it. In my opinion, that's exactly what's happening. For those of you that just joined, check out the article, take your phone camera, go up to the QR code up top. It'll bring you to the article. Let me know your thoughts, your opinions. We welcome all, posing, whatever. Thank you for being part of the Finest Unfiltered. Thank you for listening to my little rant today. And we'll be back at you. I hope to talk to you guys soon.